Hey guys and girls, welcome to Kids World. My name is Randy and I'm hanging out with you for the next few weeks as we continue to look at the life of Nehemiah and see how we can learn from the ways that God used him about how God is going to use us in our next 2 years as we go about this initiative, this mission together that we're calling Places Need Churches because people need Jesus. Do you guys know the difference between a group and a team? My guess is a lot of you have been on teams for various things, but here's the difference. A group is basically just kind of a random group of people that happens to be in the same place at the same time, but it's just kind of random, right? So when I go to the grocery store, when I'm standing in line to pay for my food, and there's other people that are also standing in line to pay for their food, well, we're a group. We're a group of people that just happen to end up at the grocery store together and just happen to end up in line at the same time. But that's all we are. We're just kind of a random group of people. Or maybe, you go to school and you go to the library and there's other people in the library at the same time. And so you're a part of a group or whatever it is, right? You go to the park and there's people at the park and you're part of a group of people that happens to be at the same place at the same time. But that's it. A team is very different. Now, a team is a group of people, right? You can't be on a team by yourself. But a team is a group of people that are working together to accomplish a particular goal. Okay. So right now, I know you're not all football fans, but football season is going on. And so if you look at a football team, it's a bunch of people that all have a different job. They all do a different thing, but they're working together to accomplish a goal, which is for them scoring more points than the other team and winning a game. Okay. That's the difference between a group and a team. A group, again, it's just a random group of people. But a team is a group of people that are working together to accomplish a particular thing. And so over the next 2 years, as a church, we want to work together as a team to accomplish what God has called us to do, to see that $18 million come in so that we can strengthen churches that exist and put new churches in places where there isn't one right now. Because ultimately, again, it's about making disciples of Jesus, like Jesus told us in the verses that we're memorizing from Matthew chapter 28. And another thing that's cool about a team is there's a lot of people that do a lot of different jobs, and some of them you never even see, right? If I sit down and watch a football game on TV, I see some coaches and I see the players that are on the field during the game, but there's all kinds of people that are never going to be on TV and you're never going to know their names because they're not famous, but they work really hard every week to contribute to that team. And it's the same with all of us as we try and raise this $18 million. It's going to take a lot of us. And so today, I'm not going to read you any verses from Nehemiah, but when you go home with your parents, if you look at Nehemiah chapter 3, there's some interesting things going on. Because last week, we saw Nehemiah say to the officials and the leaders that were in Jerusalem, hey, we need to rebuild this wall. And they said, yeah, let's do it. And so the Bible tells us that they began the good work of rebuilding that wall. And then in Nehemiah chapter 3, we see some of that work starting. And what's really interesting is the Bible describes about 10 different gates, 10 different places along the wall around the city of Jerusalem. And it names dozens of individual people. And then it names dozens of groups of people. And they all had a different job that they were doing. They all had a different part of the wall that they were working on. But they were all working together to accomplish the same thing, just like a team. They had a goal that they shared, and their goal was to rebuild the wall. We, as a church, have a goal that we're sharing. It's to raise $18 million so that more people can learn about Jesus. And the same way when we see in Nehemiah chapter 3 that there was lots of people and they were all doing something to accomplish their goal, that's what it's going to take for Christ Community Church over the next 2 years. It's going to take lots of people all doing something different, but all doing something for us to see this come together and for us to accomplish what God has called us to. So now I keep talking to you about this $18 million, which is a crazy big amount of money, right? I can't even kind of wrap my head around how much money $18 million is. But what's interesting is there's people, and it's their job, they go to churches like ours when churches are trying to raise huge amounts of money like we are, and they help the church figure out the best ways to do that. And so we've got some people that are working with our church right now to help us as we said, okay, here's what we feel God's calling us to do. And then their job is to come in and they've kind of helped us figure out, okay, well, here's, some good ideas and some ways that we think would be helpful for you guys to move forward so that can happen. And here's what's interesting about the $18 million. They told us that generally speaking, that means one person or one family is going to give $1.8 million, almost $2 million, they think is what we're going to need from one person. But then they said it's going to take about 800 people that give around $1,000. And then lots of people that give less than $1,000 and lots of people that give amounts that are in between 1,000 and almost 2 million. And here's why I'm telling y'all that. Because just like when we read Nehemiah 3 and we see lots of people doing lots of different jobs in lots of parts of the wall, for the next 2 years, it's going to take a lot of people at Christ Community doing lots of different things. Some people giving what seems like really, really big amounts of money, and some people giving smaller amounts of money. And that's okay. What's important is not how much you give. What's important is not the specific thing of what you do. What's important is that all of us are praying and all of us are asking God, what do you want me to do? And then we're obedient to it. So that's my question for you today, is as we think about the next 2 years and as we think about us as a church working on this campaign, this initiative to put more churches in more places so that people can meet Jesus, my question for you is, what are you going to do, right? We've given all of you these banks, and it's just a fun way for you to think about the campaign, put this somewhere where you'll see it. And my hope is that when you see it, you'll be praying about the campaign. You'll be praying that God helps us as we try and raise all this money, that you'll be praying about the places where our new campuses are going to go. And you'll be praying for people that you might never even meet, but praying that they meet Jesus and grow to become more like him. That you'll be praying for our partners in different parts of the world, and that God will bless them as we bless them with these funds, and that they'll be able to use that money to reach more people for Jesus. I hope you'll do a lot of praying. And I also hope that you'll actually use these and put some money in and bring it back. As I was praying about this and thinking about this, and as I was thinking about, 800 people that give $1,000, I bet some of you over 2 years could give $1,000. I bet some of you could get creative and think of ways that you could earn extra money and not spend it on yourself, but bring it to the church to be used for God's work, that good work that he's called us to do as a church. I bet some of you could do that. I bet some of you could say, hey, you know what? I'm going to pray, and I'm not going to think about necessarily the amount of money, but I'm going to think about how many times am I going to fill this bank and bring it back in 2 years? Because you can fill it and bring it back as often as you want. And so maybe you'd say, you know what? I'm going to try and fill this 10 times. And who knows how much money that is. But whatever it is, it doesn't matter what you do compared to what the person sitting next to you does. All that matters is that all of us are praying and asking God, God, what do you want us to do? And so that's what I want you guys to do. I want you to go home and really pray. And I want you to talk to your parents. And I want you to think, what is God asking me to do over the next 2 years? How often will you pray? What will you pray about? How much money do you think you could give? And pray and ask God to kind of put an idea, a thought in your mind, a thought in your heart, an amount that he might be asking you to give. I want you to think about, are there things that you could do around the church to help out? Are there ways that maybe your family could serve? Because part of what we're doing with Places Need Churches and People Need Jesus is not just putting new churches and new campuses somewhere, but it's doing things to see the campuses that you and I are in right now become strengthened. And part of that is us being more involved and doing more of what God calls us to do. Maybe it's, hey, you want to invite some people, right? If the whole goal of this is to help people that don't know Jesus meet Jesus and put their faith and trust in him and start following him, then maybe you've got some friends that don't go to church anywhere and you could invite them to something and they will hopefully begin a relationship with Jesus. Again, I don't know what God's going to have you do specifically, but I know he wants you to do something. He wants all of us to do something. The same way in Nehemiah, we see a bunch of people getting involved and doing a bunch of work. It's going to require all of us being involved and doing something to see us accomplish what God has called us to do. So as you think about the good work that God has called us to, I want you to pray and I want you to think and I want you to ask and I want you to talk to your family and say, God, what are you asking me to do? Because everybody can do something. All right, guys and girls, I'll see you next week.